As Israeli targets medical facilities, most recently setting Kamal Adwan Hospital on fire after evacuating patients and arresting its staff, the military prepares to expand operations in Gaza. The Israeli occupation forces under the command of Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi have begun reinforcing their presence in Gaza, signaling the possibility of broader escalation. This decision comes amid intensifying airstrikes and the targeting of hospitals and vital infrastructure. The ongoing humanitarian crisis has escalated, the WHO expressing alarm over the systematic dismantling of Gaza's health system. Over 75,000 Palestinians are now at severe risk due to the siege and bombardment. As Israel continues with its military objectives, questions abound about the future of Gaza's civilian population, the prospects for a ceasefire, and the role of the international community in curbing these violations. What does the future hold for Gazans? Welcome to In Depth. As the war intensifies in Gaza, Israeli occupation forces Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi has ordered preparations to expand military operations in the Gaza Strip by reallocating forces from other sectors. The Jerusalem Post reported that sources in the Israeli occupation forces General Staff say the order to relocate units is part of an effort to increase pressure on Hamas. At the same time, the Southern Command has already begun advancing plans and conducting aerial operations as part of preparations for an expanded operation. The details.
In light of ongoing negotiations for a ceasefire, Israeli Occupation Forces Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi has directed preparations to escalate military operations in the Gaza Strip. This decision includes reallocating forces from other sectors to strengthen the military presence in Gaza, according to the IOF General Staff. Halevi has also ordered an increase in troop numbers, with armored and engineering units being readied for imminent deployment. The Israeli army has reiterated warnings to residents in northern Gaza, particularly in areas such as Beit Hanun, urging them to evacuate their homes and move south. While the occupation forces confirms plans to intensify operations, specific details regarding troop reallocations or targeted military actions remain undisclosed. Amid this escalation, the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate. The World Health Organization (WHO) has expressed grave concern following an attack on the Kamal Adwan Hospital, the last major health facility in the area, which has now been rendered non-operational. With the siege surpassing 80 days, approximately 75,000 Palestinians face critical risks as healthcare infrastructure collapses. This escalation unfolds against a complex backdrop of military and diplomatic tensions, raising pressing questions about the future of the war in Gaza.
For more analysis, we're now joined from Washington by Ahmed Maharem, political researcher, and from the occupied Jerusalem by Dimitri Dilyani, member of the Fatah Movement Revolutionary Committee. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. And we start with Mr. Maharem. The Israeli Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, has ordered the reinforcement of Israeli occupation forces and preparations to expand the war on Gaza. Now, what do you think are the key military objectives behind such a decision, and what impact will it have on the military situation in Gaza?
Well, unfortunately, the Israeli chief of staff or chief of military is always trying to escalate the situation. There's so many parts around the world, especially in the area, with the help and consider from the United Nations to stop the war. I think Israeli military, they are not listening. They have a ceiling of objectives to succeed or to feel that they succeed. For more than 1 year, how many thousands of Palestinians have lost their life, how many thousands are displaced. So I think there is no hope, because Israeli military with the Israeli political, also Benjamin Netanyahu, they're trying both to do what they would like to do. They don't listen, and they do believe that they are overpowered. United Nations unsuccessfully cannot do anything. It is very clear. World Health Organization, WHO, announced many times about their concern about what's happening. The demolish of hospitals, the attack of civilians. So I think there is no power around the area or internationally can stop or give Israel a kind of compromise, unless I think the administration of America, if they are willing, but I don't think that they are willing, at least for time being, unfortunately.
Mr. Deliani, the humanitarian situation, as Mr. Maharem also said, in Gaza has been described as catastrophic, especially after the forced evacuation of patients from Qnews Adwan hospital. How do you see this escalation affecting the already dire health crisis in Gaza?
I think it's beyond a reasonable doubt that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is genocidal by design and execution. And part of this genocidal campaign is targeting hospitals along with all institutions, civil infrastructure institutions, including, of course, housing, schools, and that would include these hospitals and medical centers. The state of Israel is not sparing any effort to undermine the humanity of the Palestinian people. Our people are being dehumanized at unprecedented levels, and the war crimes that Israel is committing say a lot about not only the brutality of the army, but also it says a lot about the Israeli society that not only tolerates these war crimes, genocidal war crimes, but also encourages it. And that's why we see on the private social media accounts of Israeli soldiers perpetrating genocidal war crimes and being proud about it and not being prosecuted or even questioned. They do that with total impunity that is provided to the state of Israel by the international community, which is by large is complicit in the Israeli genocidal campaign in Gaza.
Mr. Maharem, this escalation in military operations seems to coincide with ongoing difficulties in negotiations over a ceasefire and the detainees issue. Now, how might this military intensification affect the prospect for this ceasefire, particularly as diplomatic efforts are already facing many challenges?
That's unfortunately, it's correct. There is so many efforts have been carrying for the past couple of months and still going on. I hope that very soon something can come up with the stop killing, stop ceasefire, stop the war, and also the negotiation about what Hamas have captured maybe 100 of those Israeli. Between Egypt and Qatar, there is so many meeting and negotiation, and every time there is a big hope that we will reach some kind of conclusion. I think Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet, they are not realistic, and they are not, I think, decided to do something in this regard. They will continue doing what they are doing, and it's not enough for them what they have done in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria. They're moving now to Al-Houthi and Yemen. So he would like to expand the area of the war. I don't think he has in his ceiling of objectives to stop this war. Well, let us hope that some kind of pressure can come from the international
indeed,
community.
this is what I was about to ask you, sir. Now, indeed, Egypt and Qatar are really negotiating, but they are under the sponsor of the U.S. So how do you view the role of the U.S. in this issue?
Well, I think the role of the U.S. is always considering the efforts, magnificent efforts from Qatar and Egypt. America are relying on both of them to do something for the beneficial of the area. I think maybe with the Biden administration, they failed so many times to convince Benjamin Netanyahu to do something in this regard. Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to use the absence of a proper administration, waiting for his friend Trump when he comes on the 20th of January to the White House. But I think if the cabinet, they are advising the president, the upcoming President Trump, it is good that if he can think on a different way, that if the situation will continue like that, it's not on the favor of America, it's not on the favor of stability in the Middle East. So maybe I hope that something can happen soon.
Indeed, what you're speaking about, but trying to convince Netanyahu? Anyway, Mr. Deliani, the World Health Organization has reported that 75,000 Palestinians are facing immediate life-threatening conditions due to the siege on the northern Gaza. Now, how can the international community step in to help alleviate the suffering of these civilians under siege?
We have to understand that the state of Israel is committing these genocidal war crimes out of internal, domestic, political necessities for the well-being of the members of the coalition and governing coalition, including Benjamin Netanyahu himself. Benjamin Netanyahu started this genocidal war in October of 2023 with less support than 10 Knesset members in most of the polls, taking back with the continuous bloodshed and genocidal war crimes. He managed to increase that to mid-20s and making his Likud party as the most prominent in the polls. And this gives a signal that the Israeli society is supportive of the harder the genocidal crimes are, the more support he gets. And from that point, he draws his political equations. What is the international community doing to force Netanyahu to give up this tremendous support that he is gaining as long as he is committing war crime in order for him to change course? The answer is nothing, especially when the United States of America is blindly supporting him and giving a classic case of the tail wagging the dog, not the other way around. So clearly the international community needs to take practical steps to punish the state of Israel, so they would put Netanyahu in a position to choose between his ever-growing or rebuilding his political career versus the relationships or continuing the relationships with the rest of the world. And also will give an example. Put aside the United States and its blind support for the state of Israel. Let's focus on the EU. The EU so far, as a union, was not able to take any practical steps to punish the state of Israel for the war crimes, was not even able to revoke the items in the bilateral agreements between the EU and the state of Israel, which clearly states that the EU will not tolerate any human rights abuses, which was already a case to be made before October 2023. But in any case, the EU was unable to maneuver and pressure the state of Israel. Now that's why we are asking for individual states to step up and take lead, because the EU is not taking any steps. And some of these countries, like Ireland, like Spain, like Belgium, have done that. So far, with the United States' blind support and complicity in the war crimes and inability of the European Union as a collective body to put pressure on the state of Israel, it's time for individual states to take the following steps. One, to stop all kinds of arms supplies with the state of Israel. Two, to apply their legal jurisdiction over Israeli politicians, Israeli soldiers, and all those involved in perpetuating war crimes in Gaza. Also, scaling back diplomatic cooperation and economic cooperation to the bare minimum, if not cutting off. Because most of these countries, especially in the European Union, have their own legal obligations to do such things, but the political expediency stops them from doing so. That's why these states need to step up. And I believe that if these individual states start pushing harder, Israel and the Israeli society would feel the pressure, because most of these steps will have economic ramifications. And if the Israeli society started to feel that pressure, they would push their government to change course. But otherwise, the government of the state of Israel doesn't have any reason to change course, because the current genocidal course it's taken is paying political dividends that the coalition needs it badly.
Right. Mr. Maharem, in light of the recent airstrikes on vital civilian infrastructure, including the Kamal Adwan Hospital, the latest strike, how do you assess these Israeli occupation forces' conduct under the international law? And what legal implications do such actions hold?
Well, it's not the first time, and I don't think it's going to be the last one. Usually, they don't concern what they are doing is against the international law and the human law as well. But I would like to count at least once that any of the regulations or the rules have been, respected by the Israeli army or the Israeli politician. So hope one day. The critical point is Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu personally, is very afraid from day one if the war will start. And there is a hope that those Palestinians will return back home. Is any 80% of the residential areas are demolished. The infrastructure, more than 90%, are not effective. Hospitals is also one of them. So I think he's trying to escape to the front, because if a ceasefire or stop the war, he will face a lot of questions, and I think he would like to escape from it because he cannot face it. He's trying, who is going to be responsible for the safety of those people when they return back to apply their demands and their needs. He's trying to convince some of the Arab countries in the region or a United Nations representative to come and do so far this responsibility. I don't think nobody is willing to do that, because
sir, we're speaking here about crimes against humanity. We're speaking here about genocides that were committed, and the International Criminal Court has already spoke about that. So we're already speaking about crimes. So the question is, how legally, is this, or are these actions bounded by law by any means?
Well, it is an accumulative effort. Hopefully, we were watching what's happening for the last 3-4 months in South Africa. And what we came out, it seems like America also is driving to the crazy. They said we would like to penalize the court of South Africa. I don't think that any effort will remain to be on the welfare and on the benefit of the Palestinian, but to apply it on the ground, it is untouchable, unbelievable so far.
Mr. Daliani, medical and relief crews are struggling to reach the affected areas due to ongoing bombardment and restrictions. What are the primary challenges faced by those teams, and what more is needed to be done to ensure aid can reach those in need?
Yeah, what is needed is to adhere to international law at time of conflict, and there are many international doctrines that really detail what is supposed to be done and what's not supposed to be done. And so far, the state of Israel is committing every violation there is in the book when it comes to humanitarian aid, including medical assistance at time of need. Yeah, we have to understand that, especially in northern Gaza, Kamal Adwan Hospital was the last operating hospital and was set on fire. And that by itself shows how much brutality and hatred the Israeli army is manifesting through these war crimes. And the state of Israel is not at all concerned with the humanitarian aid, and will not be concerned with the humanitarian aid, including medical assistance, as long as the world is standing quietly and not putting enough pressure through practical steps towards ending the genocide and making sure that humanitarian aid reaches the people in need in Gaza, which is actually not only the people in northern Gaza, even though they are in the most dire of situations, but the whole 2.1 million people living in the besieged, genocide-ridden Gaza Strip.
Mr. Maharim, given the increasing pressure on Gaza's civilian population, including reports of children and infants dying from freezing conditions, how do you envision the future of Gaza if this military escalation continues?
It is too sad to see kids and infants are dying because of the cold, apart from that hunger as well and thirst. It's too bad. And with this kind of weather, with the situation they are under it on different tents, and even the military are leaving them alone. They also destroy, apart from the hospital, they destroy the tents as well. So unless humanitarian assistance by World Health Organization or other parties, I think something has to be done very soon, because it is cold weather and there is no supply, water, food, medical supply. So I wish an international community can do something immediately in that regard.
Indeed. Indeed. That was Ahmed Muharram, political researcher, joining us from Washington, and from the occupied Jerusalem, Dimitri Diliani, member of the Fatah Movement Revolutionary Committee. Thank you so much for being with us, gentlemen, and I guess that brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.